Welcome to Running on Reddit. r/AskReddit. People who separated/divorced within 1 year of getting married. When did you know it was a mistake? Not me, but my dad. He got remarried after being divorced for about 5 years. I would have been all for it, but he met this woman in another state on a business trip and would travel up to see her every weekend. After they hit it off, they knew each other for 6 months before getting engaged. The engagement was only for 3 months. My brother and I tried telling him about all the red flags, telling him to take his time. My dad is very well off financially, and we kept trying to tell him things were moving too quickly, that she was only in it for the money. She moved her whole family from their hometown to the city my dad lived in, including their elderly grandmother who needed constant medical supervision. Before they were even married, the pantry was full of Whole Foods brand food instead of the local grocery store, as was tradition. All new furniture, and had the house repainted, all at his bride-to-be's request. The marriage lasted all of 2 weeks. Apparently my dad's new bride had the gall to ask my dad to leave everything to her in the will, and write me and my brother out. Only then did he realize she was in it for the money. The next day he had the marriage annulled. Someday I would like to know what it's like to fall so completely for someone that I don't recognize they are taking advantage of me. Must feel good for that instant before it all comes crashing down. This next story is a tad lengthy, but it has several what the duck moments and a happy ending. Back in the early 1980s, I spent 6 years in the US Navy. In 1986, I was recruited to go into the US Army through a program for technical and intelligence experienced military personnel to become warrant officers. All the Navy offered me was sea duty and more sea duty. It looked like a real good deal. I was engaged to a young lady 3 years my junior and had a bit more than $20,000 in savings. Everything looked promising with a new career and family life. The wedding went off without a hitch. I was looking at a vacation of about 3 months between exiting the Navy and entering training for the Army. It was when my recruiter contacted me over my security clearance that things went south. My credit report did not match my questionnaire. There was 3 credit cards with a $14,000 balance I didn't mention. It was no big deal. They weren't delinquent, but I needed to amend my answers to account for them. Turns out my wife had opened up a charge card at our bank, then got a couple of store cards around town. She had purchased some serious clothes and jewelry, but the real kicker was she had bought a horse. She had taken lessons as a child and decided this was going to be her new thing. There was the price of the animal, riding gear, saddle, and tack, vet bills, stable fees, yada yada yada. I ended up dumping a big chunk of my savings into paying down these cards, then amending my questionnaire responses. She was from a very blue-collar family. They were very good people who worked hard for everything they had. But I don't think credit ratings and compounded interest rates were much discussed at the dinner table. So I explained about credit cards, the huge interest rate, how long it would take to pay one down, then about security clearances, and having a huge debt with no job would affect it. I treated this all as a bump in our relationship, but things got dark really fast. My ship date was coming up, and things had to be done before I started training. I was in good physical shape, but I was facing boot camp, a RIT, airborne school, ranger school, warrant officer selection and advanced training. Basically, 18 months of utter insanity. I was prepared for what I faced, but there was a lot that could go wrong. If I got through it, I was a warrant officer. But if I dropped the ball along the way, I would not only be enlisted, but junior enlisted in a job they would decide for me. In theory, I could end up a line cook and some chow hall at Camp Nowhere. About a week later, the phone rings. It's about the horse. No one was taking care of the animal, or cleaning the stable, or even feeding the poor thing. The stable had covered down for the sake of the animal, but now we're charging $350 a week for the extra services my wife was supposed to be doing. She was leaving our apartment every day, and I assumed it was for riding and care of the animal, and for the first week she was. The second week, she was lawyer shopping. She wanted out. She must have gotten wind of what happened at the stable and didn't come home that night. The next day I got served with papers. Total marriage time: 47 days. So, I ended up with an apartment with 4 months on the lease, no car and a horse. I found a new home for the horse. I had to defer my ship date, and it took 14 months to settle the divorce. My security clearance was approved 2 days after the papers were filed. I shipped the next day. In the end, I had 2 pair of pants, 3 shirts and a pair of shoes that had no business on anyone's feet. I was working 2 minimum wage jobs, 14 hours a day, paying down debt, lawyers' fees, rent and sometimes eating to get by. I ended up at Fort Sill, Oklahoma mowing lawns for 2 months as I shipped without a training slot for boot camp. I wasn't happy, but I was relieved. In airborne school, I met a ROTC cadet who was going to airborne school over her summer break. She had a year to go before her commission, and we hit it off. We'd get together on holidays, between training, long weekends. When I finished training and got my warrant, still a cadet, she flew across the country to give me my first salute. I gave her a silver dollar as per tradition. 2 months later, she received her commission, to which I saluted her and returned the silver dollar. Married that Christmas. We've been together 31 years. She nearly killed me because she thought I was cheating from some texts that went to my mother. Dude, maybe don't send pickle pics to your mom. I was blindsided by it. We lived together for a year about an hour from my hometown. We relocated, upon her request and desire, to my hometown prior to our marriage, so that when we had kids, it's best to be close to family. We had a house we loved, a dog we loved, jobs we both loved working in, or so I thought. Married in October. She goes to visit her sister over the next Labor Day weekend and I can't attend due to work. Comes back the Tuesday after Labor Day and tells me she's living a lie and someone else's dream, and she needs a divorce. I had no idea. Divorce finalized in January. She married some dude that her sister was friends with, and she met on that trip I was unable to attend this September. Life is wild. Sometimes. Did you get the dog? I did not. Still the only thing I truly miss from that whole relationship. When he said my son's suicide attempt interfered with his ex's birthday party. Honeymoon. We dated for 5 years, but on the honeymoon we had a big argument over my liberal use of sunscreen. She refused to wear any because of chemicals and I liberally use it due to my ginger skin. We seriously argued over this for a good hour and she refused to even go into the pool with me because of sunscreen chemicals. After a scuba adventure with her, she could hardly walk because she got so burnt on her legs, whereas my skin didn't change. She then tried to convince me that it was all my fault because I didn't force her to wear the sunscreen and that the honeymoon was ruined. It was then I realized I picked the wrong person. After a few more psycho arguments, mad at me because of something in her dreams, mad because I didn't remind her to bring an umbrella, I had to call it quits. I can't stay with someone who constantly blames me for their own problems. Luckily no kids, and I got back everything I brought into the marriage. This is literally a Ben Stiller movie. She went out for girls' night and met a new friend named Nicole at a bar. Started texting her a lot, then going to hang out now and then. We had a baby at home, and she kept trying to go hang out with this girl from another town over with no last name, whom I was not allowed to meet. His real name was Wesley. My mom was like that, wanted to party to the point my dad told her to leave, since he was basically doing it by himself anyways. The next morning I woke up and thought when would be a socially acceptable time to get divorced. In hindsight, that says miles about why I felt I had to get married. 10 years seems pretty reasonable. I could probably last 10 years. Couples counseling within 6 months, separated within the year, cluster duck of a divorce and finally free 2 years after that. Would I do it all over again? I'm sure it took years off my life, but I learned so many invaluable lessons about myself along the way. Take care of yourself first, kids. Put that oxygen mask on before you help anyone else. The day after the wedding, when he poked me in the chest and said, "You're going to do what I say, whether you like it or not." Big mistake. This happened to both my aunt and my mother-in-law. Husbands-to-be were sweet as pie and super caring, totally charming, etc. Day of the wedding, after they say I do, it was like a literal light switch. I believe they both said something along the lines of, "You're my property now, and you'll do as I say," and when they didn't they were beat for it. I'm so glad they both got out, but it took my aunt 5 years I believe, and my mother-in-law 10. If you like the content and want to support the channel, like and subscribe right now, or you'll be running on fumes. The last story is a doozy, but oh sweet revenge. Let me know in the comments if you enjoy the longer stories. Best girlfriend I had to date at the time. I was in my late 30s, had never been married. Dated about a year. Got married. Shortly after she asked to have her name on all of my asset, a few rental houses, current house, and some financial instruments, the cars. Not a problem as we were married I thought, but on a Wednesday she insisted it be done by that Friday. I didn't have time to do that, because work had a deadline. I could start it the next week I said. She pitched a fit, and said if I loved her, I would do it by Friday. I found this strange, and decided not to start it, and see what happened. She moved out of our bedroom into a guest room. Got cold around the house, told me she would move back into our bedroom when I finished getting everything done. At this point, I thought bullcrap, and told her so. I went to my family lawyer to seek advice. She advised me not to put anything in her name at this point. Gave me the name of marriage counselor. She didn't want to go to counseling. She continued to live in the guest room. I took my lawyer's advice and did nothing about the assets. The long and short of it was after 1 year of marriage, when on our anniversary, she told me I didn't have her in my heart. I thought to myself, this is bullcrap. About a week after that I told her, if this is the way it's going to be, I'm not going to be married like this. She then told me, okay, so what are you going to give me? Yes, she said that. I consulted my lawyer on what a judge would come up with regarding community property for the past year. Number came up to 20 grand. I took that number and added about 20 grand and proposed that to her, so we can make it easy. I was going to spend more than that in lawyer's fees. If it got ugly, it got ugly. A week later, I got served with papers, with all said in the complaint. When added up, she was going after $750,000 for 1 year of marriage, 1 year of divorce proceedings, and 2 years of property settlement proceedings on what should have been a 2-hour problem. Judgment came. 215 points in the judgment. I owed her what would have been the community property, about 20 grand, but awarded me attorney's fees. So, in net, she owed me about 30 grand, and left her to go buy her own car. Turns out this judge had worked her butt off through school to become a lawyer and the same to become a judge by 40 years old. I was told by another attorney that normally this judge never gives attorney's fees, but was so pissed off at the gold dig my wife attempted that she felt it was justified in this case. Even though I came out okay financially, it was an emotional train wreck to have this happen and go through all that. It's been 15 years since it happened. I was not dateable for about 2 years, but now very happy with where I am and who I'm with. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on the bell or you'll be running on fumes. See you in the next video.